Miss T with Studio T Arts here, and if you know me, you know that we have been doing remarkable work with youth, their families right here in Sacramento for over 20 years. But I got a magnificent opportunity for you. We just acquired a massive headquarters space, and we're looking for other people who want to not only invest in the youth of our community and their families, but also make history with us. For the first time, we have a ginormous space that we're calling our headquarters, the Studio T Arts and Entertainment Innovation Factory. And we want you to stamp your name all over this. So what does that mean? That means you can help us realize our podcast room. You can help us realize a dance studio. You can help us realize our full commercial kitchen with broadcast capability. We are looking for funders. We are looking for partners. We are looking for change agents. We are looking for people who want to help us make history right here in our city. So, before I do the big ask, let me give you a quick tour.
With the lovely Tamara Sandifer, Miss T, founder of Studio T Arts and Entertainment Studio, Sacramento, California. So, Miss T, tell us a little about yourself.
Oh my goodness, that's such a big question. Let's see. I am a mom. I am a definitely someone who's heavily invested in advocacy for youth, particularly young people of color. That's been my core focus for 37 years by way of using arts and media and entrepreneurship to create different financial and career outcomes for them. I also am heavily involved in the governance of the arts from a state level and then a national level. And I'm also a grandma. That's pretty cool. One of my favorite things. And again, I'm the founder and CEO of Studio T Arts and Entertainment. And I started with a boombox, $5 and 4 kids at the park, and evolved into a statewide program in person and a national program, compliments of 2020 virtually. So we've been doing a great deal in service to young people and their families. In excess of 200,000 youth nationally we've been able to reach and offer some level of transformative work into their lives. And it's been a remarkable ride, and we're about to explode even more.
Okay, an explosion, yes. And we're going to get into that. So, first of all, like you said, you started out with a boombox in the park. Entertainment, no doubt. What sparked that moment in the park?
Well, I've been, working with young people for many, many years. I'm from like Oakland and Richmond, California. That's my trajectory, Oakland, Richmond. And we didn't have quality programs because none of us could pay for them. And so one of the things that we've done since, the 80s, my mom was single mom, 6 kids, and 5 of us girls. My brother is the only boy and the last one, so I couldn't get him involved in the dance stuff. But one of the things that kept us off the streets as sisters is, we danced and we sang, and that's just what we did, and it was a protective mechanism, but it was also a unifying thing for us. So for us, that's just the arts is what we've always done it at, with each other. So whether it was at a park and we making beats, on the busted playground structures just so that we can move to it, or, we borrowing somebody's radio and, in one of the rooms in our small apartment. That's just how I learned to teach. My charge was, at the time MTV came out. So you got 3 minutes to learn a dance routine. Whatever Michael was doing or Janet was doing, you learn it. And my job was to teach it. And so that's how we were able to, number one, keep safe, but number two, that's how I developed a skill that I didn't know was a skill that would pay many, many years later. So how'd I get into it? Here in Sacramento, we had relocated to Sacramento, which is a little more on the conservative side when we first came in 2000 from the Bay Area. And I noticed that we didn't have the same kinds of culturally rich programs here that we had in the Bay. So I figured, I could do something about that. And I just started volunteering community centers, churches, anywhere where I could gather kids safely. And then I went into the communities that I was most comfortable in. And it wasn't, the suburban atmospheres. It was the communities where, we in the projects, or the bricks is what we like to call them. So, because I wanted to make sure that those kids who were much like I was growing up had access to something quality. And then I was partnering with an organization and it didn't quite work out. Our moral compasses didn't align. And I figured, if we're going to develop these kids in the right direction, it's one thing to be an entertainer, but it's another thing to be an entertainer with habits that could potentially lead to you not being a successful entertainer. And so I respectfully transitioned out of the organization, and a handful of kids just found me. They said, Miss T, we still want to do this. And I didn't have a place. I didn't have a home base. And so there was a park that wasn't very far from my home. And I had a boom box. And, at the time, it was a very tough economical time. So I had just enough money to get about a gallon of gas and to get there, and they showed up, and then they started telling other kids, well, Miss T's doing this at the park, and I didn't charge anybody. And so we went from 4 kids, one of them happened to be my daughter and her 3 friends, to 70 kids in a very, very short span of time. And I realized that I was onto something. I should probably construct something seriously so that we can properly serve kids. And that's what I did.
Okay, look at God. Now,
That part.
period. Now, do you think that your mindset helped you to get to where you are now as a businesswoman and city leader?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you have to have, culturally, we have entrepreneurial tendencies, just because, you got to, you don't want to make it by, you want to make more than enough. And I
Right.
think that, I grew up creative. You grow up with, extreme poverty, you learn really quick how to get creative in getting more or getting better. And so I think, my business acumen came from a lot of prayer and spending an absurd amount of time in libraries studying business books, and then aligning myself with people that weren't necessarily in my cultural realm, but they were people doing what I knew that I had the capacity to do. And I don't know how I knew that, I just did.
Right.
And so I did a lot of mentoring. I asked a lot of questions, and this is all pre-internet. So I spent, again, a lot of time self-studying, but starting this company gave me the opportunity to put this stuff in practice.
Mhm.
And I would say some of my best lessons were learned through failure. I failed hard a lot. And I think that sometimes people are afraid of that.
Mm.
But that's been a remarkable teacher for me. And it's also been something that has given me the thick skin needed to take, risks and not be afraid to hurt when I fall, if I fall. So it was really, truly me just not wanting my kids to be hungry the way I was hungry growing up that really inspired me in an entrepreneurial direction. And it's just kind of kept evolving over time, because it used to be just my kids, and then it became, this kids in these communities, and these kids in this city, and then these kids in this state. So then when you realize you have a gift or a talent or the ability or even just the leadership ability that could cause somebody's life to be better, it
Mm.
stops being a job and a business, and it starts being your calling and your purpose. And so
Okay.
I lean into that.
I love that. So you failed forward a
Oh,
lot.
big time. I've lost it all more times. I don't advise people to learn that way, but it's definitely has been something that's caused me to, number one, not take life quite so seriously, because you can lose it all and gain it all. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in the country we live in, is you can lose it all and then you can build it all. And then I also think, some people today seriously take life so seriously that when they lose it all, they think that life is done. And I just find that, failure and trauma and tragedy have presented some of the most strategic learning lessons for me that have helped a lot of people win in life, just by sharing don't do like this, or definitely do like this. And oh my gosh, girl, I stepped on that landmine. You do not want to do that. So just being generous and sharing some of the epic fails and challenges, and then what works. And I find that we don't share, both sides of the coin. Often you see a lot of winning on social media, but you don't see a lot of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that on social media. So I
Right.
think that, there's something to be said about what's lost in the art of fail.
Well, our egos. For sure. Now, and I don't have a big one when it comes down to that because I'm still crawling, okay?
Okay.
So, and speaking of just going through the motions, you helped over 192,000 youth during the 2019 pandemic. So that was
Mhm.
something that you had to pivot and just restructure. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, one of the beautiful things about that in 2017, I was inspired to build an online learning platform. Now, I was doing it in response to some of the school districts we were working with that, had serious budget issues. Like, we're in, poor, under-resourced communities that just don't have the money for stuff like a PE teacher. And so I would come in, a couple times a week and work at every single one of these school sites. It was a lot of work. Um, and so one of the teachers asked me, and this is back in the DVD days, she came to me crying, because she's an older white lady. She's at the end of her teaching career, and she's being tasked to teach these kids, dance standards during PE class. She's slightly overweight, definitely not in the right shape to be teaching dance class. And then she's dealing with fifth graders. Most of them are like little black kids from where I'm from. And she would get, resistance in a way that she didn't know how to deal with the kids that were being angry. And they're trying to explain to her, like, look, if my people find out that I'm doing this, you trying to get me jumped after school. So they were just like ardent about not doing the square dance stuff. And so she came to me with tears in her eyes. She says, Miss T, these kids love you. Every time that you show up, they behave better so that they can participate with you. Is there any way you can come every day? I said, let me think. No, like I'm doing every school in a school district right now. There's no way I can do that. And so she's crying at this point and she says, well, do you have a DVD or something? And I said, give me 1 week. And so my program or my platform, it was called Pass to Class. It is called passtoclass.com. It was birthed in that moment because I knew I could help her. I just didn't know that I could physically in person help her. So I built the platform, and then fast forward to 2020, it was March 2020. I'm getting calls left and right of all of my contractors, my school sites saying, sorry, T, we're shutting it down, COVID, so on and so forth. And I'm sitting in my office in my house feeling like Job. I'm like, everything's coming undone, everything that I've worked so hard for, by way of building a service program. Everything that we do is face to face. And that's how we build trust with our kids, because they're trauma informed and you can't build a relationship with them where they trust you from a distance. So, not having access to them, I knew it would be a real problem. And so again, getting these calls back to back, I put my cell phone down on my desk and I just like, Lord, you know what? You got to help me with this one. I don't even know where to start with it. And so I stand up, and I go in the kitchen. I'm emotional at this point. I got to get something to eat. And
Mhm.
right as I'm walking over the threshold of my door, the door frame, the Lord spoke to me, and I know he spoke to me directly. He said, it's in times like this that millionaires are made.
Okay.
And he said that one word. And then I went back to my desk and I sat down and I asked him to elaborate on that. And I just started doing research of all the things that were birthed during times of, international catastrophe, wars, the Great Depression. And you got things like the Ford Motor Company that came out of that, Hershey that came out of that. And so now I'm getting inspired, right? And I'm like, okay, so I get another phone call and it's another teacher. This one's from North Carolina. And they say, look, Miss T, I know that you can do some stuff. Can you help us out? And he says, I think I remember you telling me about Pass to Class. Is there any way we can buy a license to it? I'd never heard of that before because I've always given my products away for free because I want to help people. And I said, give me 10 minutes. I hung up and, again, doing my little research, like, how do you sell a license to, it's like Netflix on steroids. How do I do this, for kids? And so anyway, I came up with the model, and he was our first North Carolina, Guilford in North Carolina. That was our first client. They were the entire county licensed our product. And from there, again, I've never advertised it or marketed it. It's all, one educator, administrators, cities, counties, one right after the other. It's like wildfire. Boom, 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 boom. And before you know it, past a class had exploded across the country. And again, I'm like, yo, but again, I didn't know that this thing that I built, by way of me trying to serve a community in 2017 was a setup for 2020. And then, a lot of people they weren't ready to be able to serve the way, we were. And that's because I had this tool. And then beyond that, I have young people and we do a great deal by way of media. And so we were able to record videos and do a lot of streaming. And I mean, it was again, what we built before became an ultimate setup for 2020. And we were more ready than I know. And it did break the ceiling of, the $1 million ceiling. And we actually landed on a Forbes list as a result of our level of service and explosion. So it was a remarkable year for us, and it has not slowed down since.
Well, congratulations. And like you said, you were on the Forbes Culture 50 Champions.
Yeah, it's
Congratulations.
yeah, that was exciting. Very exciting.
Tell us about that. And you were NAWBO, Outstanding Woman Leader. You were acknowledged for that.
Mm-hmm.
The California Legislative Women Caucus. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have so much. I don't even know how you do it. I get worn out from family. You're dealing with multitudes of
Yeah.
families and kids. So tell us about those wonderful things.
Well, I'll offer this before I go into the accolades because I appreciate, the honors. It's very nice to have that, but um it's I know why I'm here. You
Mm,
know what I mean? So when you say, how do you deal with all the different families? It's because that's why I'm here.
fact.
So, keeping that as the core of everything we do, it makes it a lot easier for us to scale and serve more. And then as far as, being on the Forbes list, what that did for us, which was very important, was it changed how people's understanding of what good business looks like.
Mm,
I mean, you can look at an Apple and you're looking at the bottom line of what they make, but you're not examining their level of service to the people that are their constituents and their clients. And so what that particular list did was it made people rethink during a very critical time about the importance of people that are leadership in business, not just leaders that are making a lot of money, but leaders that are doing the right thing with their influence and their resources to the people that are helping them become who they are. So that particular list changed the way people evaluated us. And then, and I'll say this, and I don't really subscribe to it, but I'll say this because it's a real thing. Um, I'm also a founder. I'm also a female, and I'm also very Black. And I'm from the ghetto, and I'm a hood chick to the core, and I know how to talk my language, but it's made it's created situations for me where I'm unseen and undervalued. So
mm,
being placed on a list like that, and the National Association of Women Business Owners honoring me, and then the state of California naming me Woman of the Year, it kind of opened the door for people to assess me and what I've built in a more serious way. It's not just some hood lady teaching kids hip hop. It became this remarkable person who was agile during a very difficult time, who was able to capture kids that would not have been captured during this critical time had she not had these culturally and socially relevant opportunities for them to partake of from a distance and then safely in person. Change the
mm.
game.
Period. That's it. Now, what does it mean to have national expansion? And are you partnering to help facilitate the needs of the children across the U.S.?
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely the goal. So I spend a great deal of time doing what we call professional development. Again, I don't like to, if you find the recipe and the recipe works, I don't sit on it. So
Mm,
what I've done in the past couple of years is I go different places and I do a lot of professional development. So I want to teach people to teach what we teach. I believe that we live in a time, I believe that we live in a space where there's more than enough for everybody. So I don't need to sit on anything that's working because of the nickels and pennies. It's not that serious to me. So I do a lot of professional development because I recognize that I can't be everywhere doing all of it, but there are kids everywhere who need it. So that's been a big thing for us. And then I've been super strategic in where we're having actual physical presence. So in the state of California, we offer our services densely in the largest school districts in the state. We meet our kids right where they spend the bulk of their time every single week, and that's at school. So our major partnerships are with cities, counties, and large school districts. And so we have Sacramento, California, Fresno, California, and San Diego, California for the past several years. But Sacramento, we've been in for a couple of decades. So this is where we did all of the incubation work, is in Sacramento. And then pushing it forward, we have Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have Philly, we have Harlem, New York, and we'll have Atlanta, Georgia. And those will be fully realized by the end of 2026, starting in 2024 with Tulsa and Black Wall Street, which, I went there a couple of times. There's a lot of healing work that we have to do there. So just kind of getting a good understanding. I do a lot of pre-work so that I can understand the culture that I'm working with, and I'm super particular about the who I service. I can service some people that just want a really entertaining experience, but my preference is to service people where I can shift the trajectory of your life. So I'm really picky about where I set up shop, and I'm really picky about the level of investment that I'm giving people. And that's mainly because some people, they won't know unless somebody like me shows up. They're not teaching stuff in school. They're not teaching business in school. They're teaching, things that don't necessarily help people produce for themselves. And so they have to find other ways. And my thought is, if I can help you prevent jail, if I can help you prevent, teen pregnancy, if I can help you prevent suicide, which is a real heavy challenge that we've been battling for the past handful of years with our young people, particularly our young people of color. If I can help you prevent those things and then give you hope in whatever direction is that you have a gift or a skill or a talent, then you're automatically going to produce for yourselves. You'll be able to sustain a good lifestyle. You'll be able to take vacations. You won't go into debt, things like that. So it's all, critical work, but it's critical work in certain areas. And if you can target those areas and get outcomes, the ripple effect happens automatically and organically through the rest of the city. So we try to target, the heart of the issue, and then let everything unfold by itself from there.
Well, and then you said an important thing. Number one, it's an investment. That's
Sure.
number one. And that you're targeting a certain demographic. So when you target the certain demographics, would the trauma informed youth be one of them? What is the
Oh, yeah, my goodness. Yes, that's my core.
Okay.
That's my core. I'm a trauma informed youth.
Okay. So explain what that is.
That's kids that have an added layer of trauma. So whether or not it's growing up. So for me, I grew up, with the height of the crack epidemic. Us kids became parents to our parents.
Facts.
And so that whole childhood piece was lost during that time. You're growing up in the, in the thick of the war over the drugs. The whole war on drugs piece is still very active and alive in a lot of communities. It's just the drugs just changed. Now it's prescription medication. So again, when you're trauma, that could be anywhere from, physical abuse that happens at home, emotional abuse that happens at home. Now it happens at school and it happens on social media. It could also be, we have a lot of our young ladies that the real challenge is there's a lot of influencers and entertainers out there that are selling themselves. And so our young ladies try to do the same thing and they end up getting trafficked because it's fast money, it's a quick hustle, and they're so young and impressionable that what's the difference if I can go do this with this guy and get $200, then that's 3-4 days over at McDonald's working. So the other challenge is, again, when you say trauma informed, once you're in that lane of things, it's a difficult time. It's difficult getting out of it. And many of them do face abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And so we're doing a lot of cleanup work that is being inspired by people that don't even know that they're doing it. They're just selling records and television programs and things like that. So the work is real. And again, I grew up in a traumatized environment. Again, my dad was very physically abusive. And we were often running and hiding from him. So when I say things like trauma, there are so many kids that are facing these things today. And the pressure that happened during COVID, you shut down something as big as school. What that means for kids that grow up like I grew up, that
Mm-hmm.
means you're not getting 2 meals a day.
Right.
That means you're not getting counseling services. That means you don't have access to someone that has some level of medical practice, a nurse or something along those lines. That also means that there is no exposure to people that are called mandated reporters. It is their job to recognize when a child is being abused and report it so that the kid gets protective services. That all disappeared when schools shut down. So what happened was our kids were at home, our parents who were first-time full-time parents for the first time because they didn't have the big support system called school. And so essentially what happened was a lot of our kids were in a pressure cooker. And then our parents who already had financial challenges, now like, where's the money going to come from if, everything is shut down and we have no way to do work or anything like that. And then, the government, well-meaning, was trying to, say, hey, help us on the way in a stimulus. But communally, no one knew what a stimulus was
Right.
until 2020. So there was a language that the government was speaking that our families didn't understand, which added to the fear of how we're going to make it. So a lot of our kids were traumatized, they were lost, they were abused, and a lot of the reporting that happens during school, when school is open and they have the mandated reporting, it wasn't happening until someone was calling 911. So we were losing kids in that respect too. And then people were displaced in their homes. There's a whole trauma that happens when you have to sleep in a car or in
Right.
a shelter. And so all of that was not only magnified, but multiplied in 2020. And so our work became, we do the dance stuff, we do the media stuff, we do the entrepreneurial stuff, but we also became translators for our families. Like, our leadership is speaking this language, but they understand this language. So we had to do things like, make cartoons or make videos or make t-shirts, eat right, everything's going to be tight, that kind of stuff, so that they understand that help is here, help is on the way, but we're communicating in a language that they understand. It's still English, but it's in a language they understand. So all of these different opportunities to serve presented themselves, and they were all birthed out of need of the community that we already had a trust relationship with because we built it through the services we offered by way of arts, media, and entrepreneurship. And a lot of kids, that are trauma informed, we just teach them how to use that. You know what I mean? I'm a trauma informed kid, but that's how I know how to service these kids and
Right.
build a program that works for them. So just helping them to identify the strength in the difficulty that they're going through. And that has set a lot of kids free, and they're doing remarkable things where statistically they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. Statistically, neither should I.
Right. Right. You breaking barriers. Now you offer 13 effective programs under the Academy.
Uh-huh.
And one of those programs is the T Sandy Consulting. And I like that specifically because it's very unique, but it's something that you would not commonly use, but you need it to survive. Do you remember what that is?
Well, I'll tell you this, that I'll tell you why I started consulting, if you want to know.
Yes.
So I would get it once you land on the Forbes list and all these other accolades start happening, especially in 2020. When everything started shutting down, I would get invited to these Zoom calls, and I would have people in civic leadership, people that are running entire departments for entire cities, counties, states, and they would invite me to these calls. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking I'm getting on this call to learn something from what they're doing, right? They would go through their list of problems, challenges, concerns, and then they would say, so Ms. T, what do you think? And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, well, we live in survival mode every day. So you just do this and add this and add this and make sure you do this twice. And if you ever say this to this person, they'll be very upset with you. So don't say it like this. If you want to package it, package like this. And then 3 weeks later, I'd see this new program rolled out by this program that works with these kids, and it's really great, and we're so amazing. And here's the program. And I said, hey, that's everything I said on the call. They actually did what I said on the call. And so that happened maybe 3 or 4 more times. And then a good friend of mine who was also on these calls, she said to me, she called me and she said, T, you've got to stop talking on these calls. I said, why? And she said, because you're consulting these people and this is how they're getting you to do it for free. They know that you have solutions. You
Mm,
have to start something so that people can start paying to be consulted, because they're rolling these things out and they're getting compensated to do the work, but they're doing the work that you're telling them to do
right.
because they don't have the connection you have with people, and then they don't have the understanding. They called it they called it cultural equity. They don't have the cultural equity, so they don't know how to work with people in survival mode. And guess what, T? The whole world is in survival mode now. That makes you an expert. I
That's right.
said, good point. And so the next call that I get invited to, by this way, I listen, and I started, the consulting piece. And they asked me, again, the this and the this and the this and the this. And they say, so Miss T, what do you think? I said, wow, that sounds like a real challenge. Yeah, but can you give us any pointers on how to maybe take some steps to approaching the whatever, whatever? I'm like, absolutely. Let me get you a link so you can get on my calendar, and I'll attach my fee schedule. The
Period.
whole call went quiet, but I have been making, it's been an added resource stream ever since.
Okay, look at God. So,
Mhm.
and and another one of those God moments, you are celebrating the big 50. And then, yeah, whoop, whoop. And in doing so, you're opening up a new facility. So, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, certainly. So, I had a friend of mine that I worked with, a handful of years ago. So I founded a dance day for the state of California. It's California's Day of Dance, and I hold it in different parts of the state. And I held it at her, space some time ago, and she calls me one day. This is comfortable months and months and months after the Day of Dance, and she calls me and she says, "T, I'm in Boston having dinner with this couple. They're actually from New York, and their largest tenant just disappeared. Like 2 weeks, they packed everything and just left, but they paid the lease to the end of their term." And I'm like, oh no, that's, oh my gosh, really? And she says, yeah, but I'm sitting here talking to them and they're just saying, look, we're 80, we're older. We just want to retire and be with our grandkids. I wish we had someone that would do the right thing in the community and come into the building where these people disappeared. And she said, I know it's you. Can you just come and look at it? So I was in Atlanta at that time studying some programs out there. And when I came back, as soon as I got off the plane, I went straight to the building, and I'm doing the walkthrough with the space. And, they're saying, well, maybe you can just lease a portion of it. We know it's a big thing. In my spirit, before I could even stop myself, it says, the only way I occupy this thing is if I own the whole thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then the owner goes, that's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Everybody that I've talked to about you in the city and on city level with all the civic leaders and in the community, they've said nothing but good things about what you do and what your programs do. And I have been waiting for 38 years. I've built this thing. I've been waiting for 38 years that I could get this to the right person that would do the right thing. This building is not for sale, but if it's okay with you, I would like to sell it to you. And so we just recently purchased a 36,000 square foot facility in a community called Del Paso Heights. It's not the best, but it's perfect for what we do and who we are. And I know the kind of outcomes we're going to get. And it houses anything from podcast studios, recording studios, several dance studios, a performance space which seats 300 people, a full commercial kitchen with broadcast and streaming capabilities. That was a big deal for our families during COVID. We had to do a lot of meal prepping classes for our moms and our kids to be able to help out, especially in single parent households. But yeah, it's a massive space. And then it has a co-working feature. And then one of the very important things that we added to it that nobody could quite understand until we explain it to them is I have a shoe wall. I spend an enormous amount of resources buying my young people's shoes. Some of them only get one pair a year. So they, getting bad grades in PE, because if they mess up the one pair, they'd rather take the L in PE than, get in trouble with their mom who just, did everything she could to get them one pair of J's. They don't want them messed up. And
Right.
so we do a great deal of that, especially for our young men of color. You can't just wear any kind of shoes that get you beat up if you're thumping around in some crazy stuff.
Right.
And so there's a shoe wall there, total honor system. There's also a food pantry there, total honor system. I don't believe in shaming people. Don't get in a line, take what you need. Just know that I'm going to teach you how to make money. And the expectation is what you take, you replace. And so that system has always worked for us in the past, and I'm believing it'll work for us in greater ways going forward. So those are just a handful of some of the things that our young people will be able to do. They're already doing it. We're just excited that they're going to be able to do it on a completely different level now.
Okay. So that is, I love everything that you're doing, and I would totally wear a pair of shoes.
Okay.
Totally. So, my last question, because we're running out of time, is do you have a website where our viewers can follow you?
Yeah, certainly. So our website is studiotarts.org, and we also have Instagram, that's Studio T Dance, and then Facebook, Studio T Dance, and then I personally have Instagram, that's Sweet Tea Time. I like to encourage people, and I believe it's an encouragement, but that's my Instagram. And then I also have tons of e-courses, and you can find those at sweetteatime.com. And I do have a new e-course called Rags to Riches. And I've chronicled all the different steps that I've taken that have built what people are thinking is somewhat remarkable in a human. But again, I'm a huge believer of sharing. And so I built an e-course for anybody who wants to become a millionaire.
Period. So thank you so much. I enjoyed our time, and I need the link to that course.
Oh, no problem.
T with Studio T Arts here, and if you know me, you know that we have been doing remarkable work with youth, their families right here in Sacramento for over 20 years. But I got a magnificent opportunity for you. We just acquired a massive headquarters space, and we're looking for other people who want to not only invest in the youth of our community and their families, but also make history with us. For the first time, we have a ginormous space that we're calling our headquarters, the Studio T Arts and Entertainment Innovation Factory. And we want you to stamp your name all over this. So what does that mean? That means you can help us realize our podcast room. You can help us realize a dance studio. You can help us realize our full commercial kitchen with broadcast capability. We are looking for funders. We are looking for partners. We are looking for change agents. We are looking for people who want to help us make history right here in our city. So, before I do the big ask, let me give you a quick tour.